Welcome, Rob. Today, we're gonna question you on a lot of things. We want to find out how you started, what you're doing currently right now, and just like the story. Because I remember when we had our initial chat, and you told me about how you became a writer, started doing freelance writing, all that stuff, and like initially you did not really know what you were doing and that kind of stuff. So we would like to know all of the backstory behind it, because I think that's where the juice is, and I think that's where we want to like provide value to the audience, because that would mean there are people who we think could be, early in their university or early in their high school. They could probably benefit most out of this, because especially right now everything is changing. University degrees, the value of the degree has changed. So let's just roll with that. Just introduce yourself and tell us about how you started, what you're doing right now. So floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me on, guys. The 101 version of what I do, I'll give you the short version, the long version. Short version is I convert coffee into words. I sit at my desk all day and I drink copious amounts of caffeine and I type at my computer. That's the short version. I think the real version that you're getting at is the long answer is I help B2B tech companies get more sales leads through inbound marketing. And so I kind of help a lot with the high level of the strategy, defining the clients, who we're trying to target, actually creating the content for people and that are going to actually attract people to the website, and then kind of how to capture those leads and nurturing those relationships over time so they eventually want to buy. My career kind of spans a lot of different stuff. I worked as a risk analyst on Bay Street. I was a digital nomad backpacking all around Europe and the Rocky Mountains and stuff like that for a few years. And now I'm working as a content marketing strategist at a tech startup called LifeRaft in Chain Lake here in Halifax. And so it kind of a lot of different twists and turns.
Interesting. Okay. So do you want to like go more into exactly what you're doing right now and maybe like why you are in this sector? Because I know you have your own reasons for why you wanted to be in this particular sector, and maybe describe what the company does.
Sure. I think the best way would be kind of to talk about inbound versus outbound without getting too technical for the audience. So you think about a lot of traditional advertising, which is people are going about their lives and a marketer is trying to interrupt them and ram a message down their throat, right?
Yep.
And people are bombarded with this kind of stuff all day long, and they're just trying to tune out that noise because it just gets annoying, and they don't trust a lot of those ads anymore. And so you think about it, you guys, like you watch a YouTube video and an advertisement pops up and it's 2 or 3 minutes. Do you watch the ad or you just click skip right away?
You know the answer.
And it hurts my feelings as a marketer, but that's the world that we live in, right? So that's the problem that a lot of traditional marketers face, is they keep ramming more and more information down people's throats, and they're just ignoring it. So what I do, and I'm a part of a philosophy called inbound marketing, and our approach is, why don't we create amazing, helpful, awesome content that educates customers, helps them achieve their goals, and then through that process we naturally attract people to our website and then build the relationship with them over time. So in terms of like my day-to-day, like I said, that could be writing blog posts, that could be creating videos, it could be recording a podcast interview, whatever tactics might work for different businesses at different times. But the benefits for the customers are sort of threefold. Like, number one, people are actually looking for that information. They're always typing into Google all the time. They have problems and they're entering their problems into Google looking for answers. So rather than trying to interrupt people and they're trying to dodge your ads, they're actually looking for your content. The second thing is you position yourself as the thought leader in your industry, as a respected authority. And then the third thing would be you build this trusted relationship with people over time so that when they're ready to buy, you're the first person that they think about. So if you want to think of it like, say you guys were, realtors and are into your realtor, and it's like, how am I going to position my business? Well, the traditional way could be put a bunch of ads up all over the place. And you say, well, I'm selling Halifax. I'm number one in the city or whatever. And people go, whatever, fine. The inbound approach would be, let's put out a lot of helpful content. I'm going to do interviews in the press. I'm going to have a blog. I'm going to write about how to increase the resale value of your home. I'm going to write about updates on the local market. I'm going to write about the latest interest rate decisions. And so I'm going to come across that content as a customer. I'm not on the market right now to buy or sell a house at all, but that could change in 6 months. So through that content, through developing that relationship with you, when I'm on the market to make a decision, I'm going to come to you first. And so that's what I try to help clients out with. In terms of what I do specifically at LifeRaft, our company, we sell security software, which is all about detecting nasty things on the internet, violent people, data leaks, and things like that. And so our kind of market is security professionals, security managers at Fortune 500 companies. So that would be the type of content I'm thinking about. Well, what are they struggling with day to day? What kind of content can I create for them to attract them to our client's website, my LifeRaft's website, build that relationship with them over time, and then when they're finally ready to buy something, we're the first people that they think of, and I can say, hey, sales, here's a hot lead. You can take it now.
Okay, interesting. That's amazing. Mir, any burning questions?
Yeah, I just had a quick question for you, Rob. I guess based on your background, I can see that you did your undergrad in finance, and I think this was a huge career transition. So I guess my question is, what made you motivated to transition into freelance copywriting from finance?
Oh, man. I mean, going way back, I had no knowledge that I wanted to go into writing or marketing at all. People told me marketing was you had to be good at golf, or you had to be, really extroverted and love going to parties and stuff like that, which is just not me. I'm animated right now, but generally that's not my vibe at all. Writing, I thought writers were broke people that smoked a lot of pot or something and just weren't lived in their parents' basement. So I didn't even think of this as a career opportunity at all. So that's why I went down the finance route. And kind of, just working on Excel spreadsheets all day was not really getting me excited. I did a lot of jobs at the bank, and none of those really turned my crank all that much. And I saw an advertisement one day for a financial writing position at this tiny publication called Insider Monkey. And they're just like, write some stories on stocks and bonds, and we'll pay you $30. And I did a few of those stories. I got a check for $120 American. I'm not sure what that is in Trudeau pesos, but I was like, wow, it was like a light bulb moment. Oh, you can actually make money doing this. And so that was when it started cranking, like, hey, I wonder if I could use this to be a career. That actually seeing a real money in your hands from this activity was kind of one of the big moments for me. Past that, basically what happened at one day I got laid off at the bank. It was a cold February morning. I remember I got a call from HR for an unexpected meeting. Those are never good. Yeah. And I got the pink slip, and basically I remember standing outside in front of the Toronto Stock Exchange with my bag, my box of stuff, and just -15 outside, and just thinking like, what the heck am I gonna do? And I was unemployed for a little bit, but I found another advert for writing at a publication called The Motley Fool. And I took that up. They liked my stuff. Kept doing that for a few years, started doing some traveling. And really, once I realized I was in marketing at that point, I was trying to figure out, what am I doing here? Am I a journalist? Am I an analyst? Am I a commentator? And then finally I realized one day, oh wait, what I'm getting paid for is marketing. I'm putting this content out to bring people to a website so they can build their email lists and build their business. And once I kind of made that transition and changed my mentality, I was like, okay, that was when I kind of fully made that transition from finance to marketing.
That's great. Inder, do you have anything else, or should I go?
No, keep going.
Right. That's great, Rob. Thank you so much for giving us a high level overview. My other question to you is, you were saying you went from finance to marketing, right? So I guess when a person does that and transitions to a new career, they have to do a lot of research, right? So what are some, I guess, resources that helped you along the way to actually, decide that, marketing is a way to go, or writing is a way to go? Like, what are some resources that you use that could help the viewers that are listening to your interview right now?
I mean, the biggest thing I did was I just looked for really, really good people in my field and identified a handful of people with a writing style that I liked and that resonated with me. And then I started just trying to copy them and trying to act like them. And eventually, at a certain point, you kind of master the craft, and you can be more yourself in your copy. You don't have to use them as a crutch the same way. But I found a handful of people that I just really liked their style. And it kind of, their voice was kind of similar to my personality. And that was what allowed me to kind of work through from beginner to intermediate as I was sort of developing my own craft. And when I've seen people who have, when I've been a manager and I've seen people really struggle and not really get anywhere, and I've seen people become very successful and develop their skills over time. And the biggest difference is the people that are really good, they have people that they admire, and they have the experts and the people that are masters at the craft, and they're trying to emulate that. There was an interesting example actually years ago. I was at chairing a Toastmasters meeting. So if you guys don't know what that is a nonprofit organization that helps you with public speaking. And I asked everyone that was showing up at the audience in that night, I asked them a question, who do you admire as a public speaker? And I thought it was a really easy question because I could list 50,000 people off the top of my head that I love as a public speaker. And half the people in the room had no issues at all answering that question. And half couldn't name a single person. It was like the hardest thing in the world. And what was interesting, a year or two down the road, the people I noticed that had a really good answer to that question, it didn't matter who they said, Barack Obama, JFK, Steve Jobs, doesn't matter. Those people really developed substantially from beginner to intermediate, or went from intermediate to advanced in their public speaking skills. Whereas the people that didn't even know who was good, weren't even looking at the best in their field, they never really, they either dropped out or they kind of struggled with the same issues over time. So definitely I would say, yeah, that's the takeaway, like studying the very best in the field.
You are one of those rare people who carved out their own path, right? Because you were given that bag on Bay Street and you were at, so you had to figure it out from there. Many times people stay in careers 5, 10 years, sometimes 15 years, sometimes throughout their lives, and they're never asked to leave. So they're just like on autopilot. So when someone who's young, who's either in their very early 20s or even like 18, 19, what are some of the tips you would give to someone like yourself at that stage, now in hindsight, looking back however many years it has been?
Man, I as you were just explaining that question, I was just thinking, man, that's so unfortunate. Someone that's stuck in a job that they just 10, 15, 20 years.
I know.
That just sounds like misery to me, man. I guess it's purgatory, but that is brutal.
It happens to a lot of people.
It happens to a lot of people. I've seen it, and they are boring, miserable people to talk to. They're just like waiting for their 2 weeks vacation to go down south and escape their jobs. Now, in terms of, sorry, can you repeat the question? What you were getting at?
So there are two questions there in that one question. One would be, if you could tell yourself when you were either starting off your degree or about to finish your degree, what would you do now in hindsight? And second of all, for the current times, if someone is at the same stage, when you were starting your degree, and based on the experiences that you have had over these years, professional experiences, what would you say to them? And also, maybe someone doesn't want to do a degree. So I guess it's kind of like three questions within one. So what would you say about all these three different scenarios?
Gotcha. I think you could summarize, like, if I was a beginner trying to break into marketing, and I don't think it would matter too much whether you're trying to get, if you have a degree or you don't have a degree. I mean, I don't even have a degree in marketing. So I have no formal qualifications, and I've been working in the field for 8 years. So it could be, I would give the same advice to someone whether they're in a program or not in a program. The 3 things I would be working on, if I could tell myself back then, would be number 1, work on develop your writing chops. There is a field of writing called direct response copywriting, and it's basically just salesmanship in print, getting someone to whip out their wallet and buy a product. And it's this really hardcore type of copywriting. There's lots of gurus in the field that teach this stuff for free. Dan Kennedy, Gary Halbert, Gary Benzavinga. And if you develop those core direct response copywriting skills, you can take that into any field that you want to go after that, whether that's Google AdWords, whether that's B2B content marketing, which I'm doing now, whatever you want to do down the road. But you're going to have that really great core skill set. I developed those skills in my previous career work with my previous companies, Motley Fool, Lombardi Publishing, and financial newsletters, that really hardcore direct response copywriting. But for someone else, you don't have to stay in that forever if you don't like it. It is just such a great skill set. The second thing I would say is just work on a personal project. Put up your own website, start a business, just throw $250 at something, and through that process, you're going to learn everything that you kind of need to know about digital marketing, domain hosting, getting a domain name, building an email list, creating calls to action, how to actually get an email delivered to people on your email list, all these different things. It's going to give you such a great overview. And then that's something that you can show employers that might be looking to hire you. And you're going to learn so much more when you have your own money on the line. Even if it's just $250. It's not a big investment. And then the third thing I would say is for someone looking to break in, or even if you're trying to figure out whether this is the right thing for you, is just network like crazy. And that's something I wish I did more of when I was in university. I was really focused on doing my courses and getting good grades and stuff like that. If I was going back to university now and I was 18 years old again, I would be emailing someone every day and saying, hey, can I take you out for a coffee chat? Can I just talk about this field, see what it's like? What are you doing day to day? Do I like that? Does that even sound interesting to me? You might figure out, hey, this sucks. This is not for you. Don't do it. Great. Do something else. Or by the end of your undergraduate program, you're going to have hundreds of managers and analysts and copywriters in your network on LinkedIn. And so when you go reach out for a job, you're going to have such a leg up over your competition. It's unreal.
That's some pretty good damn advice right there. Yeah.
Giving you guys my A1 stuff.
That's great. Rob, I just had another quick question for you. For those, or I guess for the viewers who don't really understand, and for us too, what is, sorry, you said B2B marketing. So can you just describe it in like layman's term or in your definition again?
Oh, sure thing. Yeah. Sometimes I'm starting to drop the jargon. B2B is just business to business. So it's the companies that sell supplies or services to other companies, essentially. And then you have B2C, business to consumer. You're selling a product to, mom, dad, households. And then there's B2G, business to government. And Lockheed Martin or something selling fighter jets to the military or something like that, those kind of services. So those are the main categories of businesses that you tend to work with.
That's great. And I guess the other question I had for you was, you said you're in 8 years of marketing, right now, currently, and you said you had no education experience. So I guess the key thing here is for listeners and viewers is, you can accomplish anything without education. Obviously there's certain restrictions on what you want to go into, but the question that I'm trying to ask here is, for example, for an undergrad student or a high school student who is really interested in going into marketing, I guess what advice would you have for them in terms of, seeing that this is the perfect fit for them or not?
For someone that's interested in whether to consider it, I think another thing that I kind of see with people who have gone into have studied and gotten a marketing degree and then ended up working in the field and then kind of washing out and failing is just they're not generally creative type people. And I think you really got to assess whether or not you have that in yourself. And you don't have to be the urban artist, starving artist type to be creative, but when you come into this field, past the very entry level jobs as a coordinator, you're probably not going to have someone giving you a template, giving you a process document to make every decision. You got to make a lot of those decisions yourself. And if that's a lot of people want to show up to work, turn off their brain and run through a process. And they want the documentation to tell them what to do. There's nothing wrong with that. And if that's what you're more geared towards, this is not the right field for you at all. No matter what type of marketing you're doing, you might have a goal and objective, and you might be here, but how you get there is completely up to you. And so you have to have that kind of the people that I see that have struggled in this field the most after a few years are the ones that just they want that process document. They want someone to tell them what to do every day, and this is a really bad field for them.
Right.
So next 5 years, usually we follow like a timeline of like next 5 years. I know we had a personal chat about it, but what would you say next 5 years could look like for you, and what do you predict? And also in your own field, how do you see the changes going to happen down the line next 5 years? Because that could also inform people's decision making, whether it would suit them to be in this particular field or not, or if they possess the right skill set or not.
Right. 5 years for me, I mean, who knows? Like
5 years is a big timeline actually. These
5
days.
years is a big time. 5 years ago, I was backpacking through Europe and stuff like that. So I mean, and just scratching out a living as a copywriter, freelancing and stuff like that. So, I mean, for me, I don't know if I'm 100% interested in the management. I'd like to see myself as kind of an expert that's kind of brought onto a team and really appreciated for those skills. In terms of the market for writers and things like that and copywriters, I think it's never been a better time in history to be a writer. That's a controversial opinion because you hear about journalism and people getting laid off by the thousands in these other fields, and people kind of assume that it's really, really bad. But you think about the internet, there is so much demand out there for businesses. They got blogs to maintain, they got the copy to write on their website, they got AdWords, they got white papers and all this content that needs to be created for all the hundreds of thousands of businesses that are out there. If you can help people get customers to buy something, there is unlimited demand for those services. I've been a hiring manager, and trying to find good people that can do this, it's extremely difficult to recruit. What I would say, and then the further thing down the road is, because there is some competition for someone that's just a pure order taker as a writer, is to think about building more the strategy, understanding how content campaigns are created and things like that. Thinking about being able to incorporate a lot more of the skills, not just being the order taker that writes something, but being able to think of how this content fits into a bigger strategy. Those people are even tougher to find. And then combine that with some kind of industry expertise, whatever it is that you kind of focus on. Like right now for me, it's been mostly security lately. But if you have a deep industry expertise, as long as it's kind of a growing field, that you're passionate about, you're going to do really, really well.
So if someone is in university right now, first year, second year, and they see this could be a potential pathway, they also see the future. So they see, well, it potentially would be paying you well as well. You could also become an independent consultant, independent writer, freelancer, you name it. What are some of the skill sets? I know you gave a few examples of how you could build yourself up as a worthy candidate, but what are some of the skill sets that you could build simultaneously as you're finishing whatever schooling degree you're doing. And like you said, it doesn't matter. It could be life sciences degree. Hell, you have a life sciences specialization now, in a way, and then you can use that. But since like you are the one who's in the industry, and you can kind of like see where the future is headed. So what would be some of the skills that could help you stand out right away, and that you don't become an order taker, you actually become someone who has a unique strategy and unique process inbuilt?
Right. I guess for someone right out of school, I mean, I got bad news, really bad news, and a little bit of good news. The bad news is there's 500 applicants looking for any particular job, right? So you just got so much competition. The other bad news is there's a lot of people overseas that can do the job too, even cheaper. So you got so much competition for every single job, and everyone's when you send in your application, there's no way that you're standing out to get an interview, generally speaking, unless you're from Harvard or something. The good news is most of your competition sucks, which makes it really easy to stand out. So like I said, if you were an undergrad and you're networking in your field, if you are doing some free certifications, like a Google AdWords certification, it's free. It's kind of an industry standard, really easy to do. HubSpot has a lot of good certifications. The certification's not going to get you the job, but it just shows that you're engaged and you're interested. And a lot of people in an undergraduate program aren't going to put in that kind of work. So you instantly put yourself head and shoulders above everyone else with networking. You go right to the top of the pile for an interview. And then, like I said, just working on your own personal projects, and those combination of things just help. The nice thing about being an undergrad, there's a lot of competition, but it's so easy to kind of put yourself ahead of the pack from the people you're competing against. For someone kind of at the middle of their career, and this is where I would consider myself and what I've been kind of working on lately, is thinking a bit more about developing a great positioning statement. So you think about like a positioning statement, it's who you help, what goals you help them achieve, and then how do you help them do it, right? I told you that straight off the bat. B2B tech companies, more clients through inbound marketing. Are there better ways that you can position yourself in that with that kind of story? So could you target industries that are growing versus shrinking or things like that? Can you offer a different type of service that there's less competition? Thinking about that, and then developing more of that specialization is what's going to help you stand out when you're the number one person on cybersecurity, or you can write about finance, or you can write about healthcare. You go right to the top of the pile because a hiring manager, they don't want to work with someone that doesn't know the lingo of their field.
Yep.
And then, those would be the biggest things I would.
Positioning statement. So that's specific to LinkedIn. Am I correct?
Well, it's kind of more your position as anyone in the market in general. So it could be what you say on LinkedIn. It could be what you say on Twitter, any of your marketing materials, what you tell people. It's just mostly saying very clearly, who do you target and how do you help them? And by playing around with some of that stuff, that's where you can kind of have a lot of big advances in your career.
Yeah, so to that point, if someone wants to have some advances and someone wants to stand out from the crowd, per se, so what would be a good example, either from your own positioning statement or just a breakdown of a positioning statement that could help them stand out,
right,
compared to other folks who are trying to break in a similar direction?
Right. Well, in terms of different ways that you can position yourself in anything that you want to do, it's like going through those 3 blocks that I kind of talked about. So who do you help? The more specific that you get with that kind of stuff, that's a great way to stand out from the pack. So if you say you help businesses, very broad, a hiring manager is going to be like, well, I don't really know what this person's about. But if you say I help life sciences companies, well, instantly you're at the top of the pack because it's like, oh, you speak my language. Now, you might cut out 99 or 98, 95% of other businesses out there, but to the few percent that you're really targeting, you're going to be the top prospect that they want to recruit for a job, and they're going to be paying a premium for that. You're going to stand out immediately. The other thing is just to think about what are the type of services that are really in demand or getting very, very skilled at that. So if you're kind of very broad with the type of things that you could do, like photography and podcasting and writing and a billion things, people aren't going to see you as an expert. But when you really zero in on one particular type of skill set that you help them with, that's another way that you can kind of stand out from the pack. And so if you're really specialized in, like, I help this particular customer with this particular problem, you're going to really quickly rise to the ranks of world-class people at that little field, because you're going to be the number one person that they call on when they're looking to solve that problem.
Okay, perfect.
Rob, I just had a quick question for you. I know you emphasize a lot about networking, especially during your career transition. So my question to you is, what advice do you have for introverts that are looking to network? Because I'm an introvert myself, so
I relate.
Yeah, so it's pretty hard, right? Trying to get your feet out there and talking to people. So I was just wondering what advice you have for folks that are introverts and yeah.
Introvert. I mean, yeah, I can definitely relate to that problem. I have about 3 or 4 hours a day where I can really be socializing, and then I kind of need my break for a while to decompress. I don't have any like fun magical tips. It's kind of just, you got to get your feet out there, and you got to understand that this is something that you got to do. There are pros and cons to being an extrovert and an introvert. And if you're really introverted, you got to move more towards that extroverted position. And for me, it's just, there's no magic bullet. It's just accepting that you're going to be nervous and pushing through that. The thing that helped me the most was, like I mentioned earlier, with Toastmasters, and that really, if you can go up on stage and give a speech, or you can give an improv answer to a question with no prep in front of 50 people, doing coffee chats and networking with people is easy peasy after that. So that helped me out a lot. Past that, I would say kind of looking for the career that kind of matches up well with your personality. So like I said, my job is mostly putting on a pot of coffee, sitting on a computer and typing all day. And I have a few meetings, but I don't have a billion meetings going on all the time, because I would just burn out. And so it's kind of finding that career path that matches your personality at a certain point. But for networking, I don't know. You've got to put yourself out there. There's not much that I can come up with.
Yeah, it's funny because from my point of view, I want it to be the opposite of what you just said about the work culture, and I burn out by not having enough conversations. I mean, yes, I don't want to have pointless conversations, because sometimes that happens, and it's like, well, where are we going with this? But yeah, it's super important for me to have regular sort of engagement going on with teammates and like projects that we were working on together. Because I'm just working by myself, I just completely lose my focus. I don't want to be working by myself.
We're just on the opposite sides of that introvert extrovert spectrum. It's like, I wish I could be more like you, capture some of that energy, but then I go like a day of like parties and stuff, and then I'm just 3 days, I don't want to talk to anyone. I'm in my room by myself, and it's just like, I'm decompressing. But it's just, and then it's finding what's that right fit for that personality. Like, I think you would hate my job. Just flat, I'd say, if you need to be around people all day, don't do what I do. You're not gonna like it. But sales or something like that, where you're talking all the time, that's extrovert heaven, right?
Yeah. That's why I've been trying to break into customer success or like, sales oriented roles. I don't necessarily have a sales background, but I know I can sell, because we are selling each other right now, So
exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's great. And then the other question I had for you, Rob, is a lot of your, I guess, current career is based on writing, right? So I guess for a person who wants to go into freelance copywriting, what are the top 3 skills that you think that they must possess? Because I feel like a lot of people do struggle with writing in general. And yeah, it's me too. Like, I do struggle with it. So I guess, what advice do you have for them to not only improve their writing skills, but 3 top skills that they must have to go into freelance copywriting?
Yeah, and if I may add just to the question, if it's not necessarily freelance copywriting, just like I would like to improve my writing skills. So what are like and Mir
Yeah.
said he would too, right? So what would be the top 3 simple tips, simple hacks that we could work on ourselves so that we could actually elevate our writing skills, just like you have.
Right. The book I would totally recommend. I actually have it on my bookshelf right now. It's The Lively Art of Writing, and it was written in like the 60s, and the examples are old, but the woman that writes it, it's just like the perfect goes from the big picture of how to organize your essays to the nitty gritty of writing sentences and a lot of the things to avoid. And that would be my go-to resource if I didn't know anything about it. That would be the first book. I love that book. I reread it once a year. And for someone that isn't, because there's a lot of like advanced stuff like with hardcore direct response copywriting that I could suggest, but it's like that's not where you're going. Then it's like you don't need any of that. That one book there would be worth its weight in gold for going from struggling to really, really competent at like writing essays and getting your message across. That book, I loved it.
Yeah. Also, this might be a very general question, but I have heard from a lot of influential folks who say writing is one of the key skills to have, and it has always been, like, since we started communicating and then documenting our thoughts. But what's your take on it? Because you are someone who does that clearly for as a professional. So what's your take on it, and like what are the different ways you see if someone is building such a skill? How can that person leverage that in different aspects of their life? Like, I'm sure you must have imagined those, this sort of like an answer, or like must have imagined this sort of a question. Like, how do you see that helping an individual in different domains? It doesn't have to be just career, but in general.
Well, I mean, everything is communication at the end of the day. Like, no, I agree with that sentiment 100%, because, we live in a capitalist society, and in a capitalist society, you persuade people. If you want people to do something for you or hire you or do anything, you got to persuade them. And a lot of that time, that's either going to happen. That's mostly going to happen in print or in a presentation or anything like that. When I was working at the bank, I was stuck at the analyst level for the 2 years I was there, and I was really frustrated because I started to see a lot of the other people that were hired at the same time as I was, with way worse skills, not nearly as smart, but they were all getting promoted up to those management levels really early on. Okay. And obviously I got the boot. So there, and I was a good analyst, but I couldn't talk about my skills. I couldn't communicate my points that I was trying to make. I couldn't persuade management to take an action or do a project or whatever it is I was trying to do at the time. And I don't think you need primo communication skills to get that entry level job, although it's a huge advantage. But you're never going to advance in your career past the beginner stuff if you can't write well and you can't speak well. It's because a lot of those skill sets are, once you get into managing, it's directing people, or if you want to start a business, it's persuading people to buy your product. And whether that's in print or whatever medium you feel best in, that can vary a bit, but those communication skills are going to be primo. Sorry, what was the second question that you were getting at there?
I don't remember either. But another question though. So written communication versus, I guess, speaking or verbal communication. I know you're a writer, so you might be biased, but just like, what do you think gives you more ROI if you work on one or the other first?
I think it would be whatever you personally enjoy more. I mean, I've done both, and I've learned a lot. When I've become a better speaker, that's helped my writing, and vice versa. So, and a lot of the skill sets are complementary. So it's which one you might lean to might depend on your personality and what excites you more. But a lot of the concepts borrow on one another. How do you engage your audience right off the bat? How do you get their attention in the first 30 seconds so that they're not checking their phone? How you do that in a blog post is exactly the same how you do it as a speech. And you've got to answer that question. What's in it for me right away? And whether you're doing it on stage or whether you do it on a website doesn't really matter. So whatever kind of, I would say, strikes your fancy. In terms of ROI, it like what you're good at and what you enjoy is going to be the first place that I would go. At one time, I would say, years ago, the written word was what you could publish multiple times and get that spread out everywhere. Whereas if you just give a speech, you can only talk to an audience in the room. Well, that's all changed now with, the internet and everything like that, right? So it's whatever you enjoy, basically.
Yeah. So when it comes to your domain, so right now you said you're also producing podcasts and other forms of marketing materials other than just like written. So when it comes to your target audience, how do you see non-written material playing a role and customer acquisition, maintaining an audience, and how do you see that fitting into the written world where the marketing was like, for the most part, it was like in your sector especially, like you've been more towards the written side of it. So now how are you incorporating the media elements of it within it, and how do you see that contributing both towards your career, and how do you see it playing down the line?
Oh, that's interesting. So yeah, in my previous role, when I was in financial publishing, it was all written, all blog posts, and I did a few radio interviews and stuff like that, but nothing much with multimedia. What I've seen lately, when you start looking at social media and stuff right now, is multimedia stuff, videos, podcasts, those kind of things. That's getting promoted a lot more in the algorithms. You go down LinkedIn and you just write a link to your blog post or something, it doesn't get a lot of play. But if you post a video, the algorithm kind of favors that. Or if you are writing up a blog post, you might have 1,000 words of text. That'll do okay in the search. But if you have text and you have video,
yep,
that gets people more, because you never know when someone comes to your website what kind of content that they want to see. How do they want to digest that information? So when you can do both, you can get everybody, and then Google loves that, and LinkedIn, the social networks love it, and that content gets promoted. So for me as a marketer, that's been something I've been trying to develop. I was a pure writer for the longest time. Like I said, I'm trying to learn podcasting, I'm trying to learn video, and develop these different skills, and I definitely see that becoming a lot more important.
Okay. So also when it comes to customer acquisition in your particular field, have you seen some differences, or is it too premature for you to have that answer? Or maybe based on if you would have seen some studies or some research done on this, have you seen there's a difference between customer acquisition, maybe higher engagement and higher acquisition when you have videos versus written, or either or maybe written still performs better when it comes to customer acquisition in your particular domain?
I mean, in terms of like what other marketers are seeing and what I've seen myself, like I said, it's the people that are curating the content, Google and the social networks, they want to see both. Especially because like I said, you never know how someone wants to engage with the content. So if you just have a big long blog post, all the people that want to see video, they bounce, and then Google goes, I don't like your site now. If you just have video, the people that like me that like reading more, we bounce. So when you got both, you maximize the engagement on that page, and Google says, oh, this is really good content, we're going to put that up to the top of the search results. When you post something on LinkedIn or Twitter, and you see it, like I've done this with my own Twitter account where I've mixed up the mediums. Sometimes it's just text, but when there's an image or there's a video to go along with it,
true,
that gets way more engagement, and the algorithms definitely favor that multimedia stuff. So I mean, and other marketers are reporting a lot of the same things.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
that's great. Rob, just my final question to you is, I know you had experience of both the corporate life versus freelancing. So I guess for a person who wants to start freelancing, so I have two questions. Number one, how do they start freelancing? Meaning, like, what advice would you have for them to start freelancing? And then my question number two is, what are some advantages of freelancing versus the corporate 9 to 5 life, in your opinion?
kind of an interesting way to slice and dice it, because I mean, I'm a full-time employee now. I've noticed the biggest difference between working with a big corporate bank versus working in a startup world. To me, those are the biggest difference in terms of being a freelancer versus an employee. I mean, there's a lot more headaches that you have to think about. You have to think when you're a freelancer that there's a bit of the learning curve. When you're an employee like I am now, everything's kind of handled for you, right? The taxes, your cash flow, your checks are coming in. When you're the freelancer, I was very fortunate to work with absolutely outstanding clients that paid their bills as expected, but I would see people kind of struggle with how often they're getting paid. You got to think about your cash flow. If you're only getting paid every 2 months or something like that, you got to budget that stuff out. You think about putting your taxes aside. A lot of people got in trouble with that because they wouldn't know, oh, I made $100, but I got to send 35 to the government or something. And they wouldn't think about that kind of stuff. So you got to do your homework. And then you have to be, when you're on the freelancing side, you got to be constantly promoting yourself, because if you stop doing your marketing, as soon as your projects kind of dry up, your business is done. So you constantly have to be thinking about that thing. And then the last thing that I would say is, I had a great point now. You edit this one out too, but I had an awesome point. I'm gonna remember it. I'm gonna remember it in an hour, and I'm gonna be kicking myself. But no, marketing, cash flow is the main things that you really got to be thinking about.
Great.
You post that point on LinkedIn. If it's that good, it should go somewhere. LinkedIn, Twitter,
it'll show up eventually.
Yeah.
Like I said, in an hour, I'm going to be kicking myself when I can't think of when it comes to my mind. But right now, it's right there in a minute.
So another question. Someone wants to choose between these three directions. Becoming a freelancer, and I know it's not an easy jump, and many times it takes a lot of months of struggle to actually be able to even make a proper living, versus going to a startup, versus having a corporate job. Out of these three, if someone's just starting out with no experience, I guess some experience because you have life experience, you must have done something with yourself, but no clear direction, what would be your recommendation to start out of these three different options that we have, being a freelancer versus being in a startup or working a corporate job?
Well, I'll advocate for one. I personally, it's going to be your personality and what you enjoy, and you got to go. If you're starting out, you just got to find something. You just need a job and pay your bills. So it doesn't really matter, and you can work on it over time. And for me, I got to say, I love working at LifeRaft at the moment in a startup world where you're wearing a bunch of different hats. And my previous role at Lombardi and the Motley Fool, which were kind of medium-sized businesses where you knew the owners or you knew top management. And I kind of enjoyed being in that tribal world where, there might be 12 people on a project and you can see your impact on the final result at the end of the day. What's really cool at my current role at LifeRaft is I'm doing the job that would be 20 people at a normal company. Some people hate that and they're going to say this job sucks and this employer is awful and no one should work there. For me, it's like, man, I'm learning about social media. I'm learning about blogging. I'm learning about email list management and all these different things. Whereas if you're at the giant corporate conglomerate, you tie that one tiny little piece. And so in terms of what I've learned over the past, has it been 9-10 months that I've been at this company, mind-boggling the amount of stuff that I get to do every day, versus in a bigger thing, you got a nicer title, you got more safety, but you're not doing as much cool stuff, in my opinion. So I would always say startup life is really, really cool. I enjoy it, and I would recommend it. But like I said, there's some people that would hate it.
Cool. Awesome answer. Thank you.
Just one final thing, Rob. I guess since we're wrapping up this interview, If our viewers and listeners want to reach out to you, do you have like a website or LinkedIn that they can connect with you?
Yeah, sure. I have my personal website. It's just my name, robertbaillieul.com. And you can, LinkedIn is a great spot to reach out to me too. Just search my name, and yeah, and Twitter as well. I'm at rbaillieul, and I'm typically poking around there pretty often.
That's great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Rob. Wonderful talking to you, and this will be out soon. So yeah.
I appreciate it, guys. Had a fun time.
Yeah. Thanks,
care.
Rob. Have a good day. Bye.